Today's the day we talk about the numbers. Q2 stats. Now, I'll tell you right now, these stats are probably our least watched videos, but I like to put the information out there. I understand that numbers aren't sexy. I get it. There's no controversy in these things. There's nothing fun and cool about it. It's just the numbers. But I like to do these numbers for anybody that likes to geek out about the numbers. Because when you say, well, Matt, I think it's X, Y, and Z, I'm like, well, I don't know. The numbers show things differently, which is why I do these. I do these for all my number geeks out there so that you can actually understand the real hard data that comes on behind what's happening in the marketplace. And when we look at the second quarter, wow, it was a quarter, right? One for the record book, some may say, in the good or bad. But remember, guys, when we talk about a market, it's important we understand this is like the macro numbers for the entire market. When we look at a market and the areas that we're breaking down, when you look inside that actual market and dissect it even further, it could tell a different story. And right now, the story still shows that we're seeing a tale of two cities, meaning that the outskirts are overperforming and the downtown markets are underperforming. So for everybody out there that doesn't, first timer, right? First time caller, long time listener, right? That's doing this for the first time, is that the outskirts are like Westtown, Wicker, Buck, Logan, Avondale, Lakeview, Lincoln Park, Roscoe, areas like that. And the downtown markets are South Loop, West Loop, River North, Streeterville, Old Town, New East Side, things of that. So think outskirts is tree line, neighborhoody streets, and downtown more like high rise is more congested, okay? And we're still seeing that the outskirts crushed it, and the downtown market is still very soft. And it's also important to know is that when we look inside these stats and, give you an example, we're going to go over some of the, a $500,000 price point in the outskirts, had less than 41 days of market time, but the average market time in the outskirts was 41 days. But if you're like, hey, Matt, I'm trying to buy a place for $500,000 and it's sold the first day, that doesn't make sense. For 500,000 or under, it's not like that, but above 2 million, it's 100 days. So of course, guys, these are averages. So again, when I'm going to read off these stats, you just have to notice that hey, generally speaking, for the overall macro market of that area, that's how it's performing. And if I want to dissect it even more, it could tell a different story. For an example, the downtown markets in let's say River North has 5.3 months of inventory, but then you look at the high-end market, above 1.5 months or 1.5 million, and you got 26 months. So you go from 26 to 5.3 months. It's a different story. So again, guys, these are just numbers. We're trying to give you a general idea hey, if you're looking over here, this is kind of how things are performing. But if you really want to dissect the market, you talk to your local individual, your guy that can really break these things down. And I can tell you right now that the overall best performing properties in the second quarter were properties like 500,000 to 600,000, under 500 and 600,000 in the outskirts. That market was batshit crazy. That market was you walk in there and you're oh my God, there's a line. You're looking, there's a line around the corner. You're oh my God, this thing's gonna go 50,000 over. That was hard, by far the best performing market. And the worst performing market was what I just talked about. Properties above $1.5 million in the downtown markets. I mean, you got I got a few listings, guys, that I haven't had a showing in this year, and we're in July. Well, this is getting shot. We haven't had a showing this year. I got a place that's $3.5 million in River North that it's dust balls. And you can see how many people are looking at it and stuff. It's just nothing. And the place is awesome. It's just, there's just nothing out there. And there's just not as much of a market for it, okay? And that's why we were breaking down these numbers to be okay, well, generally speaking, this is what we can assume. And, the biggest trend that I noticed is that we didn't have enough inventory in the outskirts. So in that entry-level price point, inventory has been a big problem. There's just not enough of it. And in the downtown markets, we have too much inventory. So that's why it's a tale of two cities, right? I think we should maybe write a little kid's book too, a tale of two cities. And this is what you read your kids before they go to bed. And you could try to teach them about the marketplace. Somebody take that out there, trademark it. Let's start selling. I'll back these books. We'll promote them on this podcast. But, that's kind of still what we're seeing. And, we just have to know that generally speaking, the second quarter has been a pretty good quarter. It's not the greatest quarter of all time, okay? It's not a bad quarter. It's just it was a good quarter, okay? Definitely about on par from what we expected. It's important to know that these stats are pulled from InfoSparks, which gets its information directly from the MLS, MRED, okay? And that I'm only referring to the quote-unquote downtown market. So if you're in Rogers Park or Edison Park or, in the suburbs, this isn't these stats don't cover these. I mean, I can only rattle off so many stats for so long, so just kind of keep that in mind. So the very first stat we want to talk about is sales price. Sales price is up, on average, up 8.4%. Boom. It's a big one, 8.4%. The place with the highest growth in price was the West Loop. The West Loop had a 23.5% sales price growth. Now, guys, remember this is quarter to quarter. So, like, the West Loop has been, like, underperforming. It's been getting crushed, okay? And, like, that entry-level price point has had, like, no buyers. And now, all these businesses are going back up there. Don't you remember, like, during the pandemic, people were like, oh, nobody's going to live in the West Loop again. Like, it's going to suck. It's like, dude, I don't know. Like, all the restaurants over there, like, all these new, like, office buildings are getting built over there. What do you mean? Like, I would just assume that if you want to go to restaurants over there, and it's got cool parks, you get to the, United Center right there, and you're building all these new offices, I would just assume people are going to want to live over there. But the media said that we wouldn't, and boom, here we go, 23.5% growth. I mean, that's a lot in a quarter. The one that actually performed the worst, which is really surprising, is Lincoln Park, went down 2.2%. So Lincoln Park went down 2.2%. Now, this seems crazy to me because when I think of Lincoln Park, I'm like, in my opinion, Lincoln Park's like the hottest market. But we also have to remember is that, like, a lot of the super high-end market, which makes up Lincoln Park, like, is trading for a little bit lower than the previous quarter. So like you bought a house for $3 million, may have went down 2.2%. Again, these are just stats, so we have to break them down on a micro-segmented, but this is just where it lands. That's sales price. And we'll, of course, put all the other ones up there. I mean, some surprising contenders, just to throw them at you. Logan Square up 13.7%. Wicker 13.6%. Another high one, the near north side, which is Gold Coast River, North Cedarville, Old Town, 9.4%. It's getting better. So, moving on from there, market time. Market time average for the downtown markets, 44 days. 44 days. That's down substantially from the first quarter. That's a good thing. Which area won the king? Which one won the trophy? Which one had the highest amount of market time? What do we think, guys? You got it. Near north side, 98 days on average. And that's just average, guys. If we look at, like, the high-end market, I mean, we're over 300 days, But on average, 98 days. Now, you compare that to the best performance for market time of Bucktown Wicker Park is 8 days. Bucktown Wicker Park, 8 days. Near north side, 98 days. Insane. Now, here's one that doesn't really make sense to me, but again, guys, I'm just pulling the stats. Okay, Lincoln Park's at 41 days. Okay, now, like I said earlier, anything under like 500,000 to 600,000 Lincoln Park, it's selling like hotcakes. It sells like in 24 hours left. I call these things flash sales. Okay, but there's a lot of houses in Lincoln Park above like $3 million that have been sitting there for 200 plus days, and that's going to weigh down the average. So I actually pulled this stat just to make sure that people out there don't go crazy and be like, man, you're an idiot when you see all of them come up. It's just the fact that, market time under 500,000 or under 600,000 in Lincoln Park has been less than 7 days. So that's a statistical fact. So again, these are macro, what's happening in the markets. Of course, if you want to know exactly what's happening in the price point of what you're looking at, have your guy pull the stats. Okay, my favorite stat, months of inventory. Months of inventory was on average 3.1 months. So on average, months of inventory is 3.1 months. Now, a balanced market for everybody out there is 4 months. So that means that we ended up in Q2 in the downtown markets. We averaged, to be a seller's market. Now, which area had the highest inventory? You got it, near north side, 5.3 months. Okay, and like I said, if you look at above $1.5 million, you got 26 months of inventory. So again, it's about breaking down the stats in the micro areas, but we're looking at the macro trends for the whole area, so don't go crazy, guys. But the worst performing area is the near north side with 5.3 months, and the best performance is Lakeview at 1.8 months. So Lakeview had the lowest absorption rates, and near north side had the highest. The second highest was the Loop at 4.6 months. Now, I got to tell you guys, that's the lowest I've seen months of inventory in the Loop since the pandemic. So inventory is definitely dropping. And the same thing for the near north side at 5.3 months is that inventory has definitely been dropping consistently. Another very low inventory has been Lincoln Park, 2.4. Bucktown Wicker Park, 2.4. Roscoe Village, 2.5. So we're definitely seeing these numbers, drop from where they were a quarter before. Closings, ABC, always be closing. It's the only stat that really matters to people who want to know what is actually moving. No closing doesn't matter, right? It's like in a game that like you can have the best game in the world, but if you don't score enough goals to win, it doesn't really matter. You know, it doesn't really matter because if you didn't put points on the board, can't win. So the closings is a big one. Closings were up on average 4%. 4% they were up. So that's not like a gangbuster stat. But some areas perform better than others. The area with the highest amount of closings, the best performance for numbers closed, was Bucktown Wicker Park, which was up 17.3%. So Bucktown Wicker Park up 17.3%. Now Logan was right behind it at 14.2%, and then the rest are kind of just out there. I mean, Lakeview and West Loop are down. Like West Loop is down 7.8%, and Lakeview is down 6.7%. Lincoln Park was down 4.8%. Now, you may say, Matt, well, if closings are down, that means those areas are performing bad. I mean, a lot of those areas were performing like with less closings because they had less inventory. Remember, if you don't have as much inventory, you can't close as many deals, so the percentages are going to be down. It's like a perfect example of the near north side is up 12.2% for closings. Well, it's up 12.2% because they have so much inventory. So they can have more closings. It's also a bigger area too, right? We can look at like the macro trends and being like, okay, well, like if we look on a map perspective and how many units come up, of course they're gonna have more, but that's just a kind of way to look at it. So these are the stats, guys. Listen, whether you love stats or you don't love stats, I like to put the numbers out there because the numbers don't lie, although they don't tell you the full story. And the problem I have with numbers is I could kind of make the numbers tell a story that I want to, and some people are biased, so they kind of skew them the way they want to show them. But what I do is tell you, hey, here's a general idea of what's happening, okay? And then if we want to talk further about what you're looking for and what your price point is and what you're selling and how it's performing, is that I could dissect them even further. But this gives you a general idea of being like, hey, Matt, how was Q2? Q2 was pretty solid. It was up, it was on par with like 23, a little bit better in some areas, which is kind of what we expected. But of course, it was down from 21 and 22. We're still seeing a tale of two cities. I think Q3 is going to be a bloodbath for the marketplace. I think we're going to see these numbers go way down solely because the summer shift sets in. I'm expecting what I'm going to be dubbing a frightful fall, which will be our next podcast. I'm not one of these doom and gloomers out there, guys. Don't be like, Matt's trying to like rain on the parade and he's doom and gloom. I'm just saying, like, listen, this is what's going to happen. Heading up into one of the bloodiest elections of modern history. We got this commission lawsuit taking place. We got the natural abundance of buyers leaving the marketplace, and this is just what you're going to see. But guess what? If you want to really know what happens, you want to see if I'm right or wrong, stay tuned for Q3 numbers. Thanks so much for listening to Laricy Live.